about they're not getting enough feedback from each other. How is a choice made for 1% of water increase? There's a population increase in the town over a few years. How is a 1% increase in need going to affect how much water the farmer gets, how much water the fish populations get, to make sure there's still a sustainable amount for these biologic populations, make sure that's still something that's being provided for in the parks and in the streams and such, where we want to sustain fish populations. It's good for recreation and so forth. So this collaborative effort was something that started taking place. The ideas were bouncing around for a couple decades, and then at the turn of the millennium, at about 2000, people really started getting together and figuring out how an integrated plan could be formed. People's livelihoods are on the line, people's very existence, other animals, their very existence. The stakes are high, right? And what was put forth in 2012 was this Yakima Basin Integrated Management Plan. And it's somewhat unique. It was born out of the fact that there isn't necessarily enough water to please everyone 100%. We're living in a sort of dry area over here, and everyone isn't going to get exactly what they're hoping for. But there has to be policy in place so that the farmer can at least get by, so that the city planners can plan for 10,000 more people in the town. What's that going to mean, and who specifically do we have to barter with for these resources so that progress can continue to happen, and basically there's enough water for long-term thinking, not just rain season or snow season by snow season, 1 year at a time thinking. That water cycle, the snow comes up in the mountains, rainwater melts down into the streams, and then we pull it out for all these things we need. The town relies on groundwater, which we get because of the nature of this dry biome. We actually get a lot of that recharging quicker than in other places, that groundwater recharging. So the groundwater here is dependent on the precipitation in the mountains that's staying here. It's not the case in all areas, but here it is true to an extent. So we're thinking in these year-to-year precipitation terms in some extent, but because we have multiple stakeholders involved in the process, we're able to stretch it out and say, okay, well, look, we didn't give these people everything they needed to thrive last year, so if they're still going to be part of the discussion, it needs to be dealt with this year, even if we don't have that much snow melt, even if we're kind of dealing with a worst case scenario as far as water levels. So, going back to the North Dakota issue, what does all that mean? Okay. Well, things that are similar is there's a high level of engagement. People are realizing how important this resource is. Maybe that's not a new thing. People have realized how important water is for a long time, but it's in our consciousness, right? Water is life. You see it in the news, you see it on Facebook. Water is life. North Dakota Access Pipeline. And so there's this engagement. There's a realization of the importance of the issue. But here's the part that I'm not so sure about in terms of North Dakota. Is the average cat thinking in terms of this might take 20, 30 years to come up with a good plan, and after that point we're still going to have to check in frequently, engage all the different stakeholders? Thinking in terms of, what if this pipeline is a reality? What has to happen with the farmers who live downstream, the Sioux tribe who use it as a drinking source? What has to happen for them to become a unified front, not just against something, but for the water itself? I think that a lot of people are doing the right thing right now. They're protesting, they're active, they're showing the importance. My perspective from what I've been learning about Yakima, what I've been learning about the water cycle, is that it's gonna take a lot of work, and an end game isn't really part of the discussion, because water is something that provides for our very existence. It's an ongoing need, it's an ongoing struggle to make sure that it's clean enough for what we need, to make sure that there's legal protections, and to make sure that the different people who may lie on different sides of the political spectrum, or different state boundaries or county boundaries, making sure that they're thinking in terms of how their water source is connected with other people's water source. Personally, I feel like Dakota's a bit far away for me to get too involved, because there's some concerns within my own watershed. That being said, there's people in South Dakota who might want to be pricking up their ears and thinking, how is this going to affect me 10 years from now? I don't necessarily have to be an advocate for Native American groups. It's not about that. It's about the connectivity of this resource. It's unique in that way. So, let's think it through. Realize that it may take a lot of effort and a lot of coordination, and while you're at it, you can perhaps go back to your basics and check out the water cycle. Think about what that means for your own community. Is that good?